Welcome to Gone to Texas, a podcast about AMC's Preacher. My name is Alex, and I have not read any of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
And my name is Nick, and I have read all of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
Today we will be discussing Season 4, Episode 3 of the AMC series, titled Deviant. While we will not be spoiling any of the comic and by extension any future plotlines of the show, we will be discussing the details of the series through Season 4, Episode 3, so pause this and go catch up before you listen to the rest of the episode. You can find more episodes of our podcast at g2tpodcast.com. That's the letter G, number 2, letter T, podcast.com. We're also G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can send feedback to g2tpodcast at gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Preacher or our podcast. And as always, if you enjoy this show or any other show on the Midwest Podcast Network, please consider heading over to mpn.bz/Patreon and pledge as little as $1 a month to making our network even better. Special thanks to Jason K. and Gojo, who have pledged at the level of $10+ per month.
Thanks, guys.
Woo! Yes. So we did get some listener feedback. There are people still listening to the show.
We got a lot.
We did.
Way more than I expected.
There's a ton. So unfortunately, I might gloss through a little bit of it. There's also some stuff in the Discord that it might be good to touch on. But yeah, let's get right to it. So we heard from Anne by email. She said, "Hey, Alex and Nick, I thoroughly enjoyed your recap of episodes 1 and 2, as well as your off-topic discussions.
Good.
A few thoughts and questions I jotted down while watching and listening. As for the plural for Humperdew, my suggestion is Humpers Do." She said, "Alex, you can cut this out if it's a bad suggestion." I think it's a great suggestion. I think she's referencing the idea of the plural of cul-de-sac is culls du sac and not cul-de-sacs.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so Humpers Do, I think, is a very valid. If Humperdew is somehow rooted in French, then maybe that pluralization makes more sense than Humperdew or Humperdews.
I did just read some tweet where someone pluralized something else in that same fashion, and now I don't remember what it was, but it was really good, and it would have been really awesome to bring up in this moment. But maybe
well,
it'll
that
hit
sounds
me
like it would have been great.
Yeah,
Nick.
It might hit me like a bolt of lightning in a little bit.
That's fine.
We'll see.
And goes on to say, "Why do you think they dropped 2 episodes on us in one night for continuity?" I don't know. I think
they just want to get it out of the way.
Yeah, that was kind of my thinking of like, let's get it over. I'm kind of surprised it's not like a 2-hour finale too. Of like, all right, there's basically just 8 nights of Preacher we're gonna give you. It feels like they're probably meeting timing for like The Walking Dead or something like that, and I don't know, something of that nature. I don't know what the slate is like for AMC this fall, but
I wonder if the finale will actually be longer. Maybe not episodes 9 and
true.
10, but maybe 10 will be like 90 minutes.
A little bit,
or something.
That's
I hope so.
entirely
honestly.
possible. I don't think I've seen any press releases that say otherwise, like say either way, but I think that's that they've done that before. So, Anne also says, "The only things I noticed in the Jesse falling from the plane scene is that Jesse has a really bad black shiner and that you clearly see the phallic boulder in the background." Are either of those things the things you were referencing, Nick?
Maybe. I haven't gone back to rewatch it yet.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I went and rewatched it, and I just saw what Anne said because I read her email first. But
all right. So maybe what I saw in the background in reference to the boulder, I don't think it's the boulder, but my knowledge of the comics might be informing something else.
All right.
So I do have to go back and rewatch it.
All right. That's okay.
I made a mistake. I was going to, and I just forgot.
That's all good. Anne says, regarding MCM-LXV, the Roman numeral date on the University of the Grail sign, she says, "Alex, you are right. It is 1965. Masada Wikipedia noted that the archaeologist's excavation dates were 1963 to 1965. So that's a great reason for why the university started. That's probably when...
That's actually impressively accurate.
Yeah, that's great. She says, "Nick, I thought Frankie was a Baldwin too," and she agrees that the pilot is the best character on the episode.
Yeah, he's great.
And down to the important stuff, soda versus pop. She says, "I'm from the Midwest, south side of Chicago specifically, and we always said soda growing up, but we do add S and weirdly the to words. Examples, Jewel is a big grocery store chain down here, and you'll commonly hear people say, 'I'm going down to the Jewel,' or 'I bought this at Jewel's.'"
That is also, I think, represented here a little bit.
100%, yeah. for
like,
sure.
For some reason, the one that pops to mind is Kroger. Like, I would hear people say, "I'm going to go over to the Kroger."
Yep.
Or
yep.
the Krogers.
Let's go to the A&W.
Exactly. If you want to go full Michigan, the A&Ws, the Krogers, the Aces.
Do both at the same time.
The Home Depots.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would it be
Absolutely.
the Home Depot? I don't know.
It's the Homes Depot, I think.
You know what? It probably is, yeah. South side of Chicago. And that's interesting. I would have thought Chicago maybe said pop as well, but I swear that's got to be like a super concentrated Michigan thing. Cause I
don't know. We'll have to do a little more internet research.
I was listening to an episode of Dax's podcast, Armchair Expert, which I highly recommend, and he referred to. They just did a live episode in Detroit.
Yeah,
and I wish I had gone to it because it was Peter Krause. They
don't
that's say who.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they don't say who the guest is. I don't think.
Okay.
In advance, and it was really wonderful. It was a good listen. It was really interesting. But he says at some point in like the recap or the fact check portion of it, he refers to pop as pop because I guess after the show they went to Lafayette and got Coney dogs and like did some other stuff, and he mentions pop, and he just says it so offhandedly that it struck me because I never hear it unless I'm talking to somebody here.
Interesting.
From here.
That's awesome.
It's good. He's carrying the torch out to the West Coast.
Absolutely. Ann also says Diet Dr. Pepper rocks. Thank you, God. But my current crack is Diet A&W root beer. Also very good. A&W root beer is a special kind of root beer. If anybody out there hasn't had A&W root beer
ever,
yeah. Especially even like not even necessarily the stuff in the can. The stuff
frosted
at
mug.
the restaurant is the particular.
Try to get it in a frosted mug if they still do that.
Yes. And finally, Ann says, I laughed so hard when Nick sarcastically and sadly said, we're back.
Yeah, I did too.
And
inside.
She said, well, I'm glad you guys are back, and I'm looking forward to the rest of Preacher Season 4. And as always, your extremely entertaining episode discussions, Ann. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann. That's very sweet.
Yes.
That's lovely informative feedback, too.
Informative.
It's got facts. It's got opinions. It's got jokes.
Yes.
And please write back with your thoughts and feelings on Malort, being that you are from Chicago.
Yes, if you've had Malort.
She has to have. I was just up north, which is another Michigan term. I found people out of the state don't know what that means. They're like, what? Where? Canada? No, just up north. And there were two friends there that had just moved to Chicago, and one of them had been exposed to Malort, and the other had not. And she was like, how do you know about Malort? And I was like, well... Pull up a chair. I got a story. Fellow Midwest film nerd Tim Long's bachelor party featured a bottle of Malort.
Yes.
And
infamous or famous, depending on how you feel about it.
And I carried that same bottle, what was left of it, with me up north to the same gathering this time last year, and made a bunch of my wife's family try it, and they couldn't believe what they had tasted either. So,
Good. I'm glad Malort is also spreading. We carry the torch of Malort.
Sadly. The Malorts.
Yes. Mark wrote in on Twitter, said, glad to have you guys back covering the show. That said, I couldn't help but think of this Simpsons bit by the end of the podcast. You two were pretty enthusiastic at the beginning, and then all that enthusiasm all but disappeared by the end. And he linked to a clip of Homer falling down the Grand Canyon. When Bart's there with his skateboard.
Yeah, that's an awesome bit.
Yeah, it's perfect encapsulation of how that episode went.
How we were feeling
in terms of enthusiasm.
I was really looking forward to hearing from Mark.
Yes.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes, we're glad you're back with us, Mark. Anthony wrote in on Twitter as well. He said, I think you guys should definitely do a Preacher AMC comic podcast after this season. Alex spent this much time on this so far a mediocre adaptation that it needs to pay off in the end. I'm definitely on Nick's side with the show, with how the show is going, and it's sad.
It struck me when I was watching this episode 3, it hasn't been sad until now because...
There was hope.
Well, yeah, there was hope. It kind of feels like if you got to the end of like high school or like college or something and you were about to finish and you kind of looked back and were like, if only I had tried a little harder, maybe my experience would have been better, or maybe like if I had put in that much more effort, or... I do this kind of stuff a lot in my day-to-day. Like, look back and be like, man, if only I had done
I knew that girl liked me then.
I don't do that anymore. But you know what I'm saying, though? You kind of you look back and think like, and that's kind of the way it feels. Like with each season, it was like, well, there was good, there was bad, but I'll take it. And there's another season. Cool, I have that to look forward to.
Yep.
And now that we know it's just the end, and we're kind of looking back and like, It's just going to be
the
bitter.
final report card is like coming into focus.
Yes, and it's going to be bittersweet.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of real good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Across all 4 seasons so far. There's a lot in this episode I loved.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic still.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about the books today. Just while I was driving, I was thinking about the comic, and I was like, man, it's just, you really do have to read it, whether we record or not.
Well, we'll figure it out.
What makes me eternally sad, and I've talked about this on several of our other shows, is that you will always have the show first. And the show is going to, I think, inform your book experience a little bit. Or
Maybe.
you're going to like look at like the rendering of like Cassidy and Jesse and Tulip and be like...
And see Dominic Cooper.
Right.
Yeah.
And while that's beautiful in its own way that that's your experience, it makes me sad as someone who had such a great experience with the book that you won't have the exact same one. You know that feeling when you're really into something and you want your friend to enjoy it in the exact same way?
No, you're summarizing the founding of Alex's tears and that.
Oh yeah.
Your con in the Star Trek universe is not my con in the Star Trek universe.
Oh, that was so amazing! I always forget that's the origin of that.
Yes. So
yes, if anyone who's aware of our oft-referenced,
go listen to the Midwest Film Nerds episode for Star Trek Into Darkness in order to learn.
Is that when it happened?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was
during the recording.
I thought it was at
episode.
the theater.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I thought it happened when we went to the IMAX to see it.
No, you
Okay.
You basically you were saying things that like I wish it would have happened this way, and then I basically started crying because I was like it did happen that way in 1965 or whenever the original series was on. But anyway,
that is. I do have to go back to listen to that.
Yes.
That's a movie that I've been really meaning to give a rewatch because one of my friends insists that it's way better than I give it credit for, and I'm always like, it's kind of not.
No, there's no way.
We also argue a lot about Star Trek Beyond, which I thought was awesome, and they do not like. And so I just think I won't like Star Trek Into Darkness anymore the second time.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's already been, would it come out? Is it 2013?
Probably, yeah.
Something
It was a good 6 years ago or something.
I mean, sure.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, Sue wrote in. She said, "Hi guys, so good to hear your voices again. I really don't care how good this season is. It's just fun listening to you talk about it. Also, what is this word soda you speak of? And you mean to tell me there's no S at the end of Myers and Menards? What about Trader Joe's? Keep the laughs coming. Your Midwest friend, Sue." So I think Menards does actually have an S.
It does. Yeah,
okay.
I was making the joke because you said take the S from Menards
Yeah.
and repurpose it.
Yeah, that's right.
It just becomes Menard.
Yes.
My father-in-law loves Menards, and I've never set foot in one. And every time I see a commercial, and I'm like, "What is that store?"
It's incredible.
Yeah, he loves it.
It's a whole. We could start a Menards podcast, I think. But
well, if we ever do our home improvement podcast,
yes.
What were we gonna call it? The Binford
the Binford Files.
Yeah.
Yes. Man,
that's a passion project.
Yeah. All right, and then there were a few more comments here. There was some good Discord stuff that went on. Dave Steele said, "I haven't watched episode 3 yet. I was out of town for this weekend, but after Cass decided to stay back, it just feels like we're treading water. After the flash forward that started the season and the first bit of the Masada breakout, I was excited with the pace of things. Then we just grind to a halt, and I don't get anyone's motivations for anything. I think I'm letting my 2 read-throughs of the book inform my understanding of the characters too much. It's great to listen to you guys talking about Preacher again."
I love you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Yeah, sounds like you shouldn't have read the comics before the end of the show.
Yeah, that's it. I can't believe
because I'm loving it over here.
I can't believe you read it twice already.
Yeah, he reads way faster than I can.
Yeah, that's the way that book is, though. Honestly, like once an arc hooks you, it's just nonstop. Like.
Got to keep going.
Yeah, there's some. I had to look up actually a Wikipedia article of Preacher side characters based on a couple characters that appear in this episode that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
I wanted to remember their exact names from the book, and then it led me down this rabbit hole of reading about all the supporting characters, and I got a little misty-eyed just thinking about how awesome some of these characters are that will never make it to the show.
Interesting.
And what a bummer it is.
Interesting. All right. Joseph also wrote in. He said he was replying to Bruce, and he said, "At first I thought the pilot's code was just a joke and kind of funny, but on second thought, I thought the guy was essentially saying, quote, 'You hold yourself out as a preacher and I'm just a pilot, but I'm going to try to save that kid and you're just here for your lighter,' end quote. Then I saw episode 3, and now I think it's just a joke again."
Yeah.
But he also went on to say, Nick, does comic book Frankie remind you of James Gandolfini in True Romance? That's the vibe I got in episode 1.
Wow, that's a real specific citation.
I've never actually seen True Romance. So,
Really?
yeah.
Oh.
I don't know if you know this. I haven't seen any
Yeah,
movies.
I was gonna say, I shouldn't sound surprised when I say really. I should have been more really. Yeah, Gandolfini and True Romance is a movie that, excuse me, I like, but I only like it because every single side character is amazing, and the two leads are insufferable. I do not like either of them. I don't like their characters. I don't like the actors. I shouldn't say I don't like the actors I just don't like them in that movie.
Yeah.
They're really difficult for me to deal with, but every side character is fascinating, and each one has I just want to watch more of them, which is fine. It makes for a really interesting movie.
Interesting.
Anyway, actually, True Romance is sort of related to Preacher in a weird way, in that there is the Duke from Preacher, who is John Wayne, that's talking to him.
Yeah.
The main character in True Romance has that also, except it's Elvis and not.
You brought it up before. I think,
and it's one of the coolest parts of the movie.
That's awesome.
But it's almost the exact same mechanic, which is really interesting. And I'm trying to remember which came first. I think True Romance actually.
True Romance
came
is
first.
1993.
Yeah,
and I think Preacher started in 97.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Double check. I have the internet. 95 actually, so a little bit earlier than I thought.
In the same era. That reminds me, there is a listening recommendation I have to make at the end of this episode.
Okay.
If you will remind me.
All right, let me. I'm gonna stick it into the notes here so that I do not forget.
Okay. But yeah, Frankie from the comic, I feel like he reminded me of somebody too, but it wasn't Gandolfini. But I could totally see that if you could transport Gandolfini from that movie, to now, that would be awesome, because then we'd have James Gandolfini back, but also he'd be really good in that part. Yeah. I like this guy. I like what he's doing. It's just they've taken him in a very different direction.
Yeah.
He is in the book, so that's weird.
Yeah.
Other side note, Gandolfini's character in True Romance is the third Vega brother from Tarantino, because Tarantino wrote True Romance, but Tony Scott directed it.
Yeah.
So Vincent Vega is John Travolta. Vic Vega, I think, is Michael Madsen in Reservoir Dogs. They're brothers. And Virgil Vega is Gandolfini in True Romance.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be brothers.
Interesting.
Which is kind of cool. But they all could not look more different from each other. I guess Gandolfini and Michael Madsen have kind of a similar thing, but Travolta's the odd man out. I think it's Vic, Vincent, and Virgil.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cool.
There's some useless knowledge from my film bro days in high school.
I'm sure I'll get a round of bar trivia with that information.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. All right. I think we will go ahead with our recap here. I decided, for reasons we will discuss a little bit, that it would be better to break this episode down by character rather than act break. So we're going to do it a little bit differently this time around. But we discussed this a little bit before we officially started recording, and I just kind of felt like the editing of these first couple episodes is all over the place. And it might get to a point where it makes sense as to why, but I'm mostly like, kind of the big thing for me is that I don't really understand why we went back to look at the Desaad house. I don't know why it was important to put Jesse on that plane at the end of episode 2 and then to come back and revisit it. So it feels like they're pulling a card trick that I don't understand yet or something. Or maybe I'm reading into it and it's not really that important.
I think it's I hate to say this, but I think it's just a cheap way to make it seem more interesting than it is. I think there's a chance that
you think they're trying to pull a Westworld season. No, not really, but
no, I think there's a chance that they're waiting to reveal all the moments at which God has been present, so to speak. Like we saw him with his little figurines and that, and they might be staggering this stuff weirdly chronologically, so then they'll do like a big reveal of like during all these particular moments. But at the same time, it feels like, I read this somewhere before, and I wish I could remember where, but like when talking about like people who teach like screenwriting and stuff like that are so mean, but they're very like they're right about a lot of stuff, and they say when you have to just insert, if it's unmotivated, these like chronological jumps, if it doesn't service the story, then you're doing it just as a lame way to seem more interesting, basically. Yeah. And I think it's a very film school thing for like people to just play. They see a movie that does that, and they're like, "Oh, I'll just do that because it made that movie interesting." When it didn't, it doesn't help the story anyway.
Yeah, it seems like a very memento discussion,
right. Yeah.
which like what does that movie become when you put it in order? Is it still a compelling story or not? You can watch the chronological cut if you want to, but like once again, I'm just coming back to Gotti, where I just felt whiplash of like where exactly we were in John Gotti's life throughout that entire movie.
That's a phenomenal example,
and that's kind of exactly what I'm feeling in Preacher in these first couple episodes of like,
Gotti.
Apparently Gotti's just informed my life from now on.
I have a feeling we're going to mention Gotti in every... that's going to be the Kyle XY of this podcast.
Good.
Gotti, go watch Gotti.
Yes.
I actually dug up a bunch of... I scrolled way back in my Twitter feed from this film critic I used to like pay a lot of attention to it, and they had a ton of tweets about Gotti when it first came out in theaters, and it was so hysterical.
That's good.
I was reading all these and just like cracking up. Now that I've seen the movie, and I understand it's even funnier than you think. But yeah, you're 100% right. The editing in that movie is nonsense, and there's literally all you have to rely on in terms of time period, like when it is the makeup and which of his kids he's talking to.
Yes.
Because some of them are dead later and some of them aren't. And it is just, that's all you have.
Yeah.
Because the settings don't change.
Hair piece is not reliable because it probably sticks around for too long than it should in some places.
The wardrobe doesn't change too much.
No.
The look of the film doesn't really change to like denote older. That movie is crazy. Everyone watch it. Everybody watch Gotti. That's your homework. But watch it with people that will be able to laugh at it with you, because you'll be mystified at how incoherent it is.
And I guess the thing is, by the end of this episode, I feel like we lead almost directly into Jesse falling out of the plane, is the thing, which is weird to me.
I hope not.
Well, and that's what's weird, because we get that title card. Obviously, he's got the black eye. We get that title card of like, a few months earlier. So it can't be, right? There's got to be more time in between, unless I'm just completely confused at what's going on.
I agree there has to be, but I'm not sure what's going to happen. It seems like they're playing kind of fast and loose with their own
and I don't know why yet.
Rules.
So maybe in the end I'll be like, oh, that's fun, but I feel like at the end I'm going to be like, that was cute. And I don't know why, but
yeah, I really want to be blown away by this season, but it just doesn't have the same feeling to me of like care and like handcrafted that every single episode of like season 1 did.
Yeah.
I was thinking back to again, while I was driving and I was on the way here, I was thinking about to a certain scene from season 1, and now I don't remember what it was. But I just remember thinking that like every sequence, it was something with Fiorent de Blanc, I think. But just everything had this like feeling of like they really sat and thought about every decision. And now it kind of feels a little more like
we're a bit on autopilot. Of like,
yeah, I think they maybe, and it's hard to blame them, but maybe they mentally kind of checked out and started working on the boys a little bit more, or they just put other people in charge and were like, here's the roadmap, figure it out. But based on the screen time and structure of certain characters, it does feel like maybe they just ripped out whole pages of like the script and like their treatment, and we're like, we'll just move this up to here, we'll move this character here, we'll move A to B, X to Y, and we'll just get the show done as best we can.
Yeah, they tried to pare it down.
Try to salvage it, essentially. So they may have had a roadmap for like 5, 6, 7 seasons or something, and then instead they just had to try to fit in some stuff they wanted to fit in. And I could be 100% off base with this, but this is what my gut is telling me.
Yeah. No, and it's hard not to read into that kind of thing. Like, they know the show's ending, so they got to hit certain beats, right? But it's just, what did they choose to do, and what did they kind of bunt it on and things like that.
Exactly. And like I said, you can't necessarily fault them. It's kind of a bummer, but do you know what I'm saying? I'd be curious to see if anybody else felt the same way. But I even remember in our reviews of seasons 1 and 2 and probably even 3 to an extent, talking about like, oh man, there was a shot that blew my mind and it like looked so cool, and they really were like using these cool camera techniques, and there was just a lot more. It felt like a lot more effort put into it
Mm-hmm.
in order to make it seem extraordinary. And I'm getting ready to praise the sequence in this episode later, so I'm gonna kind of have to eat my words later. But I still overall just kind of feel that way. I've left almost every episode without feeling that there was anything super special yet. And I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and it's all just gonna the knot is gonna cinch, and everything's gonna feel airtight, and I'm just gonna be like, well,
that's what this editing
don't
thing
I have
is
egg
making
on my
me
face?
Making me feel like
it's like Westworld. Every time we doubted with Westworld, something awesome happened. And
yes.
We're like, okay, there you go. Which if you haven't watched that and you're listening to this show, go watch Westworld and listen to that podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's coming back at some point in our lives, and we'll keep doing that too.
Yeah. I did want to say one other thing. We did get a quick note from Allison on Facebook. She said, "I'm an avid and local listener of your Preacher podcast, and I'm glad the show and you guys are back. Just wanted to let you guys know that All American Rejects will be playing at Arts, Beats, and Eats. Any chance of a Humperdew interview?"
No.
Probably not at all. Yes. But,
I wish. That would be awesome.
If everybody tweets Tyson Ritter and says, "Go on this podcast," he will ignore it, but we'll all feel good about ourselves.
We will have tried.
Yeah.
I'm sure Alex will. We usually go to Arts, Beats, and Eats.
Yeah.
And you'll probably bring a pocket recorder in the off chance that...
Run into him at the Polish Village tent.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I'll be.
Yeah. All right. Let's get going. We got Eugene and the Saint is where I'm going to start because I think it matters the least. Eugene and the Saint trek through Texas on foot and get rebuffed by a driver while attempting to hitchhike. Eugene confirms that the Saint can hear Jesse when he uses the word. They make a pit stop at a diner and discuss what they're going to do when they find their way to Jesse. Eugene wants a sincere apology while the Saint just wants to kill him. Eugene gets up to go to the bathroom. I'll stop there quickly.
Okay.
I did kind of like that discussion. It feels like this ultimate, like I think Eugene is getting fitted into this spot of like pure good against the pure malevolence of the Saint, and it is, I think to me it's working more than Eugene and Hitler did.
Yes. Weirdly enough.
Yeah. So I get, and maybe it's because I feel less bad about like, I feel less bad feeling bad for the Saint, right? Or feeling sympathetic for the Saint.
Oh yeah,
you
should feel sympathetic for him in some way.
So
based on his origin.
I think that dynamic works a little bit more for me. And then the actual important stuff that happens to them, if there is any. While in the bathroom, Eugene gets lured into a glory hole situation and subsequently gets busted by a sex detective who puts him in a car to be taken to an orphanage when the Saint steps out of the diner to kill the man driving the car. Eugene and the Saint take the car, and Eugene prays for the dead man to go to heaven and to forgive the Saint for killing him. Eugene tells the Saint that he's uncomfortable with all the killing, but the Saint says it's all part of God's plan. I remember sex detectives coming up at some point in conversations.
Yeah.
Watching the episode, I felt like to me it felt like fan service because I don't see where it could really be going. Did you get the same feeling, or is it?
I think so.
Okay.
They're not the first or last instance of fan service in this episode.
No.
Actually, I think that like I said, they're pulling a lot of characters in and just being like, well, let's just put them in there. Yeah, the sex detectives are. They're really entertaining in the comic. They're not in it a lot, but they're really entertaining. There's two of them. I don't know if the dude in the car was supposed to be one and the guy in the trucker hat was the other one, because usually they roll together. But anyway, they're really not even worth talking about anymore because that's probably all we're going to get from them.
Yeah.
They probably just use this as an opportunity for a one-off joke of somebody proclaiming themselves a sex detective, which is really funny.
And that it I guess the weird thing is, like, if that's all this really is, if it was just like a joke fan servicey thing, it feels so weird and useless to stop at in these last 10 episodes. So I almost feel like they might come back later for more, but
they might, but honestly, I don't really care if they don't.
Yeah.
Like, the acknowledgement of it was enough to make me like smile and go like, oh, that's cool. It's basically like an Easter egg, you know?
Yeah.
If you know, then you know, and if you don't, you just were like, "Wow, sex detective, that's funny," and like move on with your day.
Yeah, and it was a cheap way to get an arse face joke in there with the hole in the stall. So yeah.
So the sex detective was in the other stall, right?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I was thinking
the way it was cut,
thinking it was one of them, and it was like entrapment, basically.
maybe, like potentially.
Even though it's just confusion on
yeah,
his part.
yeah. I think you could kind of read it that way, but the dude in the hat like busts into the bathroom and tells them both to like get on the ground or whatever he says to them. I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah, really, it's not worth.
Really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had in my notes that I really want to like Eugene. Like I do like him. I like him so much more than the comic Arseface. He's like the only character that has benefited.
Yeah.
But they just don't know what the hell to do with him, and
No.
it sucks. It like bums me out. The Saint, pairing him with the Saint is like, it might be interesting, but at the same time, throwing this anchor around the Saint's ankles is just such a drag.
Yeah.
You just gotta let him do his thing, and that's when he works best. And it was at that point, and also a point later with the Angel, where I just almost said out loud to nobody, like, why are you changing it? Like, you don't need to. It's so good the way it is. Like, just adapt it. Don't revise it so much. And obviously, I'm just screaming into the wind at this point. It doesn't really matter. But it's, I don't know. Like, it is interesting, but it's more of like a passing novelty. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not getting anything out of that conversation, because if Eugene is kind of the ultimate naive good, and the Saint is the ultimate like cynical bad, I don't even want to call him evil necessarily, but I guess he is. Like, neither of those guys is going to change their mind about what they are, and it's going to be what it is.
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway from all that is that the Saint ate his turtle pie.
Oh yeah.
And then proceeded to go out and shoot that guy from like a mile away.
Yeah, he didn't just leave it. He didn't like have a bite and be like, "This isn't whiskey," you know. Like he might have enjoyed it a little bit at least.
You know, I shouldn't be so hard on it, because at the same time I am kind of enjoying the not humanization of the Saint, but watching him be forced into dealing with regular stuff is kind of entertaining. Yeah, it is kind of amusing, but I just don't. There's other characters I would rather.
That's the thing, is that I really liked him gripping the table when he finds out that the diner doesn't have whiskey.
Like, it was funny.
Like, he's just a hair's breadth away from destroying that
Killing
entire
everyone.
building.
Yeah. Totally.
But then Eugene figures it out. He's like, "Okay, what about turtle pie? Let's try some turtle pie out. Maybe that'll be good." Like, and Eugene's just kind of like trying to keep the situation together. Yeah. Make sure nobody dies as long as he can.
It is like this weird like chunk and sloth situation from the Goonies, where they're just gonna round off each other's edges.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Yes.
And I don't know. It could be entertaining. I shouldn't be so quick to dismiss it. I love the comic Saint so much, and I think he's perfect.
Yeah.
So naturally, I'm going to meet it with a little bit of like discontent. But there are things about it that I do like. I do think Graham McTavish is awesome as the Saint, and like I said, I really like Eugene. Like that. What's that actor's name?
Ian Coletti.
Yeah, something like that. Is he in the opening credits? Is he one of the top billed? Okay, good.
He's been top billed since season 2, I think, or something like that.
So he's received a credit. Okay, good. Because I honestly couldn't remember. It goes by so quick now.
Yeah.
Because there's so many more of them.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was just trying to remember what his little image was in his name, and I think it's him peering through the
hole.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So I did see the. Yeah, as soon as that shot happened, I like laughed, and then I was like, I think I've seen that before. So yeah, that's what that's from. Okay. Yeah, he's fantastic, and I just wish that I liked it all more.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
The waitress, what did she say? She had something that was really funny. I don't remember now.
It was something about the whiskey, right? And like, if you don't like it, leave kind of situation.
Yeah, that was one of my other notes. The Tom Hardy-esque groan that came out of the Saint when she said they don't have whiskey was so funny. It's that low grumble of like discontent. Yeah, kind of like when your dog is upset.
They hear a car driving by several blocks away. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was very good. All right. Next up, I have Featherstone, maybe equally as unimportant. Featherstone is hot on Tulip's tail as she notices an empty wig stands in Tulip's wardrobe at her hotel. She breaks into a meeting between Star and Hoover 2 as they polish a story about the Desaad house for the media and discuss Star's beauty. Featherstone claims success when she's really only just got a hunch that Tulip is somewhere inside Masada. She bursts into the Grail infirmary to find the doctor has already released Tulip. Yeah, what do you think about Hoover 2?
That made me laugh. Just at the mention of it. He genuinely hadn't thought about what he was going to call him and just said
Hoover 2.
So that hotel room is where the season started, right?
I think I think it's the same hotel room that Jesse had his dreams in. I think it's at the Holy Bar and Grail Motel.
Yeah, but where we see future Cassidy and Tulip together.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's because as soon as I didn't make the connection until I kind of suspected, but once I saw Featherstone in there and got more of like a master shot of it, I was like, oh, that's got to be the same room.
Yeah.
Or at least the same hotel. That is actually pitch perfect Featherstone star, where she does genuinely make some sort of breakthrough, but it's something that he's 100% disinterested in.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, the thing you were working on that I wanted you to work on. Oh, no, not that. This. And he's just like, like that is persistent throughout the comic. Both Featherstone and Hoover constantly being like, sir, we solved this. And he's like, you did. And then they look and it's not what he wanted them to do. And he just does that thing Pip Torrance does so well. Where he's like rolling his eyes and it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we haven't gotten as much hair Star by this point in the season as we did in 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of bums me out. Like when it cut back to him in his office, I was like, oh yeah, hair Star.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see more of him. He's just so amazing. Pip Torrance just kills it. But he's also really difficult to look at now, which is obviously part of kind of the point. But it's just like, not only because it's gross, but just because I'm kind of like, it doesn't really affect anything. But the conversation was very funny with Hoover too.
It was good. Are you sad that it's not the French guy that we kind of talked about last season? How he's got like the Allfather has a right hand man who's a French dude, and we were thinking maybe that would be Hoover too.
No, not really, because this was very amusing. Where it's like he's the perfect replacement, except he doesn't suck up to Star. Yeah, which is what Hoover and Featherstone did so well.
He does in some way.
They just worship Star. Yeah, but not the qualities he wants. Like the ones he takes for granted, where he's like, yes, I'm very efficient and ruthless and all that, but am I beautiful? No.
Pretty good.
I loved that guy. No.
Yep.
I disagree.
Yes.
Hoover too. So Hoover's totally gone. Then.
Oh, for
I
sure.
I was kind of like hoping that Hoover was still going to show up, and I was like, huh, what a weird decision to make. To even turn him into a vampire in the first place was very strange, and I still don't understand why. And then to just kill him. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a weird Trojan horse, and into the les incompetents, les enfants du sang. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Malcolm Barrett was just like, yeah, I'm not going to be here for season 4, or what the deal was that they just ended up burning him at the end.
I will miss Hoover.
Yeah.
OG Hoover. He was amazing.
I almost would have rather had them like capture another vampire for Star to do that with or something
instead
like that.
Instead of Hoover, yeah.
Yeah.
Poor
yeah.
Hoover.
That's a bummer. Wow. Anything else with Featherstone and the Grail and that one? There's still a little bit more with Tulip in the infirmary, but other than that,
yeah, not really.
All right. Let's talk about Cassidy.
Okay.
The episode opens on a commercial for Toscani face cream, now with more foreskin. Cut to Cassidy chained up to blood bags and a constant circumcision machine in a factory in Bensonhurst, New York. He gets chained back up in Masada, and we learn that Frankie stopped Star from killing him so he could be farmed for foreskins.
Called it.
Yeah, you did. Absolutely.
Frankie, the foreskin magnate, Toscani.
What'd you think of the commercial?
It was really funny.
Pretty, nice boilerplate.
I was really hoping
beauty product commercial.
Yeah, when the man first started walking up with the commercial in the tux, I thought it was Tom Brady.
Oh.
And I was like, that would be so fucking amazing if they had landed like 2 celebrities to be in that. That would have been the icing on the cake. And I'm like, man, Seth Rogen knows enough people. Just get some.
He should have called somebody.
Absolutely.
In. Like I almost thought the dude was Joe Manganiello for like a split second.
That would have been all equally 100%, as good.
Yeah, and yeah, if it was him, and even he's dating Sofia Vergara.
Married to her.
Yeah, he's married to her. So that would have been a good couple pairing for the foreskin cream commercial.
Been awesome.
But
they should have been. That reminds me of on. I don't remember who's. I think it was also Dax Shepard's podcast, and Jake Johnson told a story about Seth Rogen. Just being like, hang out with him for a whole evening and think it was the best thing ever. And his wife was like, who's he?
Yeah.
Like, just not impressed. She's not fazed by celebrities. And he's like, that's how I know she's like so great. Because that status doesn't matter to her.
Reality check for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very well done. When it opened, I knew it wasn't like a Hulu commercial or whatever.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't like that kind of ad. And I was like, oh, what is this going to be marketing? And then sure enough, with right on the label.
Yes. With more foreskin. Yeah.
Good stuff. So obviously this was a flash forward to him in Bensonhurst, and then
I don't know that it was because they show him getting carted locked back up.
I think it was because he's not at Masada when Tulip gets into the cell, and the angel's like, yeah, he's gone. He went. I miss him too. He's on his way to Bensonhurst.
If that's the case, my mind is blown. Like I don't get it.
That's what that
I
was.
Feel broken.
Yeah, that was my takeaway. Was that he wasn't actually there yet. That when we cut back to him, we get the recap. We actually got footage from the previous episode. The recap of him being shot, the foreskin harvesting, the whole speech about because you think you deserve it, all that stuff.
But not quite. See, the weird thing is they do the commercial. They show him at Bensonhurst and the truck driving off. And then I'm pretty sure, let me double check my notes here. Let me go through. Yeah, so I wrote commercial for Toscani face cream, cut to Cass hooked up to a constant circumcision machine. Cass gets locked back up in Masada. Frankie explains Star wanted to let Cass burn. But then later on here, I also have replay/reminder of Cassidy's foreskin removal in class and Frankie's repeat client talk. So there's a reason why I feel like it wasn't a flash forward, but I just don't know. Like that.
I think
my brain is broken now.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I just don't see them flying him back and forth from Masada to Bensonhurst.
That was the thing, is that like I felt like it was like a trial or something like that, or like it wasn't like the final move or something, but who knows.
Yeah, I think that's also part of the point is like Tulip finally gets in to rescue him and he's no longer there. He's
straight up gone.
In the States. Something too about the way that he and the angel were talking about Brooklyn or about New York made me think he hadn't yet gone. Like the angel was trying to like paint some hope for him, like there's a lot of Irish people there or something. But
yeah,
we'll see.
All right. In his cell, Cassidy feels resigned to his fate at Bensonhurst as the angel asks what his next move is. Cassidy says there is no next move because he deserves Bensonhurst. We finally get details on Cassidy's backstory. Cassidy was enlisted in Ireland to fight against the British during World War I in 1916. He lost his friend Billy on the battlefield and turned his back on him when the Brits came to kill him. As Cassidy headed back home after deserting his battalion, he gets accosted by a swamp vampire and gets turned. Cassidy eventually reaches his home and sees his grandma looking for him, but decides it's best that they don't see what he's become. We finally got some Cassidy backstory.
Yep.
Was it what you wanted it to be? Is it?
Ooh. In ways, yes. The actual like transformation or the instance of him being bitten was like perfect.
Okay.
Except for it kind of went on a little too long and incoherent underwaterness. But like that part in the books is horrifying. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but there's something about it that is just really gruesome.
You've got a open body of water, like fear of shark type thing.
Oh yeah.
And so maybe it plays into that a little bit for you, do you think? Or is it more than that?
I mean, water is scary, but no, I don't think so.
Okay.
You got to read it. Like when you read it, you can see the way it's laid out. Plus, the way Cassidy is when he's a human still is different. They go the opposite route in the show. So I don't know how much I want to talk about it. I don't think I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
He's different in the show than he is in the comic.
Okay.
Pre-vampire.
Okay.
So it wasn't as bad in the show. but in like the book, there's just something really pathetic and sad about it when he gets bitten, and it just you really genuinely like feel really sad. And in the show, it's not as sad. It's more just kind of creepy. But I expect this is a bummer. Based on how the season's been going, I kind of expected it to be a really lame like the swamp witch vampire thing, but it looked pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, they actually went for it. Like I was impressed at like the makeup and like the rendering of it, the way it flew out of the water at him. But there's something way more unsettling about the way it happens in the book, because it's less big. It's much bigger in the show. There's like a struggle and like it leaps out of the water at him. In the book, it's much quieter, which is also what makes it so scary. It's kind of like the idea that like in horror films, sometimes the big slasher kills aren't that scary. They're more like spectacle. But it's like the horror movies where people just walk up and stab people, that it's like way scarier to me.
Yeah,
because it can happen so quickly and quietly. It doesn't have to be big and showy. And I think that's it's like that scene in Zodiac by the beach, or the park. Which is like the most infamous scene. It's so disturbing because of how plain it is, and it just happens, and it can happen that quickly. And there's something about the way it's done in the book that's much more in line with that. Plus, he's not alone in the book. There is a witness to the instance, and it makes it even sadder that he just is like, this is happening to him, and someone's just watching it, basically. So, it's better in the book, but I did like it in the show. Like, I'm glad that we at least got it. I was distracted though, because I spent most of the time at his like the little shack where he lives, thinking like, so where in Australia is this that they made look like? And I was too busy. Yeah, I was too busy thinking about whatever sort of LUT they applied to the camera to make it look like Ireland.
Yeah,
in quotes, not Australia. But it's good that, we saw him when he was like regular. I honestly wish we had more of it, because as it got rolling and it got to the moments in the city and stuff, I was like, this is some of the most interesting stuff we've seen this season. And I would like to see even just a little bit more. But again, it's good. But the way it's handled in the book is just ultimately better. The way that he is spooling out this information, he's not telling it to the angel in Masada. He's telling it to somebody else, and it's a little more impactful in the book. But I did like it. I liked the war stuff. Was pretty cool. It looked pretty authentic. But again, the editing, he's there, and then he's suddenly in the swamp, and I was like, could I get a shot of him running away? Like anything to kind of carry me.
Yeah, you kind of have to imply that he like deserted his post and
I just needed something to carry me into that scene. It just happens, and I was like, all right, we're here. And once I got excited though, once I saw he was standing in the swamp water, and I was like, oh hell, it's coming. It's coming.
They're doing it.
Yeah, I got excited. I was like, sweet, and it was pretty effective. But then again, all of a sudden, he's just outside his house, and like he has just made peace with the fact that he's a vampire. And in the book, he doesn't... Yeah,
like he automatically already knows, like, this is what I am.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no discovery of it.
There's no internet.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's read Dracula yet, but like in the book, it takes him a beat to understand. Like he like...
There's the why am I thirsting for blood, and
then there's the why can't I be outside in the sun, and all that. There's a process of discovery which just compounds the horror of the situation.
Yeah.
Not only was he attacked by this thing and left for dead, but he like comes to, and he's like there, and then the sun is hurting him, and all this. Yeah, exactly. Like it's just.
I was a little shocked. Here's what I'll say. Like I was a little shocked that it was just we're doing this in an act break. This is a thing that like in the days of 22 episode seasons of Buffy, we would have gotten a full episode of just Cassidy.
Yep.
And
honestly, that's kind of what I wanted. Well, again, man, I'm just a broken record, but the way it's done in the book is perfect, because it's in like it's over the place of 2 issues, I think.
Okay.
And it's when he's just having a conversation with somebody, and you just spend the full issue essentially on it, and it's great. It's exactly the way it should be. And yeah, I would say, give it a half hour at least. Let it breathe a little bit, because it's a really interesting origin, and you get to see him as a human character. Granted, the show Cassidy is not as far removed from humanity as comic Cassidy. He's definitely got some more human tendencies still. Like comic Cassidy does not feel shame about anything that he is or does. So the fact that show Cassidy is like throwing the pity party and saying like I deserve it, all that's already very different. But it makes it makes the origin even more sad when you're reading the book and you see like what he once was, and you realize that, what 100 years will do to somebody essentially. And I doubt we'll get any more Cassidy origin, which is a shame because there is more depth to him. Like when he comes to the States and all that, you do spend a lot more time with him, and it's some of the best stuff in the books. Honestly, it's amazing. You get most of that stuff later on in the series, though, which I think. But they do a great job of just kind of sprinkling it along throughout the book, so you don't get like a ton of Cassidy up front or in the middle or at the end. It's very nicely laid out.
Interesting.
But as the show goes, I liked the sequence. I thought it worked well. Hopefully, it helped some viewers understand a little more, or hopefully, it doesn't feel like too little, too late, or just kind of crammed in there.
Yeah,
I mean, it took till season 4,
and that's the thing
mean?
is like it took till season 4, and they gave it 15 minutes, and or maybe 20, but it kind of just like. I honestly wanted more. I thought it was going to be more, and I thought it was going to be a little bit more. I thought it was going to carry more weight for me, and I don't think it did. Like it just kind of, I don't even necessarily know that I feel as though he would. Like, why has it taken him 100 and something years to feel that he deserves to be tortured for the rest of his life?
That is a great question. I'm actually not sure why all of a sudden.
Why is he reckoning with it right now? Why didn't it come up earlier in his lifespan? Why hasn't it plagued him the entire time? Did it plague him the entire time? I don't know. And so I don't necessarily know that I just kind of buy that as his reason to resign himself to get taken to Bensonhurst. But at the same time, we kind of get indications that he hasn't necessarily done that, which we can talk about shortly. But
the only thing I did really actually enjoy about, or an additional thing I really enjoyed about the sequence was that the angel kind of telling him, like, I forgot the exact quote, but he basically says like, we were touched or something like that.
Yeah, I might have it right here.
Cassidy's talking about he didn't think the angels took pity on him or anything like that, and the angel's like, no, we did.
Yeah, he said we were touched or something. Yeah, he didn't say a lot, but
and then
Cassidy says, in the end, I just thought it's better that they think I'm dead. Instead of seeing what I'd become, I turned my back on a friend in need, and I got what I deserved. I don't blame you angel types for giving up on me. Yeah, just another Irishman feeling sorry for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that the angel, that was interesting the way he kind of said that, and I feel like that should have bought Cassidy some relief to know that like some of the heavenly host hadn't given up on him, that his story mattered to them, that he mattered to somebody, and somebody upstairs. And the bit of the angel shaking off a feather to come down to him as he was like singing that Irish song, I was like, I really liked that moment. I was like, this is really...
Well, it does get like started with a fart. I don't know if you heard that or not, but the angel like farts a little bit, the feather falls off, and he starts singing.
Oh, is that what?
Yeah, so there's a nice little fart joke.
I didn't catch that. Well, there you go. So that seems about right. But I did like it, though. I kind of liked that Cassidy had somebody sort of on his level who's not a human, who has also seen all these parts of the world and can kind of converse with him in that way that nobody else can.
Yeah.
It kind of made me start to enjoy them as cellmates more than I was, because the whole time I was just irritated at how they're using the angel or not using the angel.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of like, this is probably his only function. I did like the angel's hair. That was pretty awesome.
His hair is pretty
rad. Pretty out of the comic, actually. The angels have very distinct looks in the comic, and it's pretty crazy.
That's cool.
But they did get that part, which is pretty neat. The rest of it is very weird, and I don't understand what the hell they're doing. I actually have in my notes that I thought the angel was not real initially. I was like, oh, he's not even actually there. It's just Cassidy's.
It's a figment of Cassidy's imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah, until Tulip sees him at the end of the episode, right?
Yep. But I was starting to feel really good about my theory that the angel was not actually there, and this was their way of using the angel from the book and psyching out the viewers and the readers. But apparently that's not the case.
Yeah.
Oh, I could not, when I was reading the book for the first time, or pretty much every time, I could not for the life of me figure out how Proncius was pronounced.
Yeah.
Because when you look at when you read it, you're like, what? Proncius? Yeah. I know. Cause
stupid Americans.
I didn't know it was a name. The first time I read the book, I was like, what is this word they keep calling him?
Yeah. Yeah.
which actually helps a lot with the book. But anyway, yeah. We'll talk about that if we ever talk about that.
So he
The
did
Nick
say, so
Blofeld story.
Cassidy and his angel friends sing Irish folk or drinking songs in their cell. We see the angel goading Cassidy, remarking that there's plenty of Irish people in New York. I did skip over a little bit. The angel's touched by Cass's story, and when he farts, a feather falls to Cassidy's feet. Cassidy remembers his grandmother saying the angels will be watching over you as he looks at the feather. And then as Frankie and his men cart Cassidy off to Bensonhurst, we see Cass has the angel feather with him. I don't know if it was sharpened or not. It kind of seemed like it might have been, like he might have honed it to a point. I mean, like a quill might be a little pointed anyway, so
an angel feather might be
a good shank.
Yeah, sturdier than a normal feather.
Or it might be good to pick his way out of shackles, something of that nature. All right, Tulip. Tulip is in the Grail Infirmary, and while she looks okay on the outside, they want to conduct a psychological test before she can leave. She starts a fight, but ultimately gets sedated. What'd you think of that fight? Yeah.
That's fine.
And pretty kind of unremarkable. It's sad, because I feel like...
I think Ruth Nega's really good at selling fake punches and elbows.
Yes.
Like I'm really impressed by her ability to do that.
Yeah.
I will say that for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if the thing that really cheapened it for me, I'm kind of getting more dismayed. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm getting a little bit bored of these weird source music needle drops.
Yeah.
Not only in this, but in like everything. Yeah. Like it feels, not that it hasn't been a thing in the past, but I don't know. Maybe people just aren't making good music choices, and it's getting to me now. But
yeah, there were better ones. What was the one that played when Jesse is first fighting all the Grail people? Do you remember?
I'm not sure if I do.
You remember the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Though?
Yeah.
It was something silly, like in terms of it was a song that it wasn't Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, I don't think, but something along those lines.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, I probably have it written down somewhere. But
anyway, I agree with you though. It kind of dropped in, and I just was like, I felt the same way I felt throughout pretty much all of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where I was like, oh, another Source song juxtaposed with people getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Sick.
I don't know what that noise is, but I'm going to put it on the podcast network soundboard. All right. Tulip feverishly dreams about the words in Jesse's letter to her, supposedly calling her a stupid, cheating, lying bitch. As she wakes up chained to her hospital bed, she learns the doctor joined the Grail to help people. Do you think the letter actually said that? Or do you think that's what she's feeling in her mind?
That's what she's feeling.
She's feeling the guilt of lying to him about...
If the letter said that, we have definitely failed as an adaptation. Jesse would never say that to Tulip.
Yeah. So there's probably a later reveal of like, here's what it actually said, I assume.
Yeah.
But
the first part might have been accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely not where it went to. No.
Yeah. But yeah, the moment of the doctor being like, I actually joined to help people, you know, and just kind of, I felt like it was a little bit of like, oh, not everybody in the Grail is an idiot and there for the express purpose of subverting world power or whatever. Yeah. So
yeah, that's thin ice.
Maybe
an organization like the Grail.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like getting ready to say that there's fine people on both sides. That just isn't the case.
Good. All right. Tulip finds out her psychological evaluation indicates she's a, quote, uninhibited deviant with a personality disorder prone to psychopathic outbursts and a gun fetish and unresolved abandonment issues. She basically agrees, and the doctor offers her sympathies as she remarks, some people just can't be helped. That scene cuts to Cassidy locked up.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was pretty on the nose, but kind of like a more connective tissue between Tulip and Cassidy of like two people that don't necessarily feel like they can be helped out of their situations and the people who they are and what they've done in their life and that kind of thing. I don't necessarily know that it carries as much weight with Tulip since she's not an immortal vampire, but
yeah,
I think it works. And then after Featherstone finds out Tulip was released, Tulip finds Cassidy's cell empty as he is getting transferred to Bensonhurst. So, all right, and then finally, most importantly, we have Jesse. A lot of stuff happened with Jesse here. So, while on the plane, Jesse recalls what happened at the Desaad house. Upon opening the door, Jesse gets smoke blown into his face. When Jesus Desaad descends from the stairs, Jesse asks about the boy we saw in the window. He doesn't like what he hears, so he punches Jesus out and heads upstairs. What do you feel about the Desaad house and this depiction of Jesus?
It's pretty perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a really distinct character from the book, but ultimately pretty inconsequential, I think.
That was what struck me as weird, is that he's dead by the end of this episode.
That was surprising.
Was it? Okay.
That was a little sudden. But they don't, I think that in my mind, and probably potentially a lot of other Preacher fans make more of him than he really is, because he is so distinct, and his appearance in the book is not long. Okay. But he has like he's like on a cover, and he's extra gross looking on through the renditions of I forgot the name of the cover artist. Glenn Fabry. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, the casting is pretty pitch perfect. Like, he looks pretty disgusting and pretty much as he does in the comic. But yeah, the house has the same general vibe of just like
debauchery,
weird, yeah, exactly.
Deviance, and
it has the Sinner's Welcome sign outside and all the masquerade ball kind of theme. That part in the book is actually weirdly kind of funny. I mean, you could say that about pretty much any page of Preacher, but there's something really funny about him, about Jesse, and in the book, all three of them are there, I think. Definitely Jesse and Cassidy, at least. And if I recall, they do end up getting into a big giant fight, and they end up just like beating up everybody there, which is really amusing. And you're just kind of like enjoying it because they stick out. They look like the two people that showed up to a Halloween party not in costumes. Like, they look really funny.
Okay.
Like, just the way it's drawn.
Yeah.
So it's definitely kind
everybody else is really stylized, and they're just people.
Yes, and he's just dressed as a preacher, and Cassie just has like his jean jacket and like sunglasses. Yeah. But yeah, I do. The sex detectives, I think, are there actually in the book for a little bit. And man, see, I gotta reread it all again now to remember. I think it's definitely in the first half of the series. I think it's actually pre-Masada. I think that. Yeah. Anyway, I won't speculate any further to stuff that I already know somewhere.
The man playing Jesus Desaad is James Smithers, and he has literally one other credit, and it's a short called Double Date.
Is he Australian?
I don't know that this information. No, it doesn't say on IMDb, so he may be, but
it's probably a local.
But he's got such a distinctive face. It kind of blows my mind that he hasn't been in more stuff.
James Smithers.
I
feel like if they were going to make a Preacher film and they would have had him in there, he would have been played by Michael Sheen. Just seems like the type of character he would have played.
That makes sense. I could see that.
Oh yeah, here's his Glenn Fabry cover. Yeah. It's pretty nuts, right?
Yeah.
It's gross.
Yeah. Or David Bowie. What if David Bowie played him in a movie?
Yeah, I don't think he would have gone for this role.
Probably not, no. All right. So Jesse stumbles through the upstairs hallway and finds the child being photographed for money. He kills the man taking the pictures, and the boy gives him his shoes and wallet back. We can confirm it is the same child that stuck Jesse up earlier in the season. As Jesse goes to leave, a horde of people approach to fight him, and Jesse ultimately kills all of them, but in the midst of the fight, it turns out Jesse likely shot the boy unintentionally. Jesus Desaad comes to complain about his broken nose to Jesse when Jesse brutally destroys him. So in a lot of ways, I liked this fight scene. I did feel like you could really feel where they were trying to stitch the big hallway fight scene together with single takes.
Mm-hmm.
lots of going into Jesse's. It's always they zoom in on Jesse's back because it's black, and yeah. So that I feel like I can feel them trying too hard, but when it blew out into like the big splash page of like all 3 segments of the hallway, I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah,
it was really cool.
They did a lot with this. I loved the same thing is pretty much what sets Jesse off in the book. Like he's down with like pretty much everything that's going on at Jesus Assad's. Like it's all gross and weird, and he's like not into it, but he's like whatever. It's a bunch of weirdos. But when he when he sees the kid in there, that's when he's like, and that is the moment where as the reader you're like, here we go.
Yep.
And you know
everybody's dead.
You know that exactly. The sleeves are getting rolled up and some asses are getting whooped. And in the show they did a great job of this is probably my favorite fight scene in the series.
Wow.
Yeah. I loved
all
of it. And I don't mind them going in for the cut points because I get it. I'm like, as long you got Dominic Cooper doing it. It's not like Daredevil where his face is hidden, so you can just stick in a stunt double and no one will be the wiser. And it's not like Dominic Cooper is very capable in these scenes, but I don't know his background. I don't know if he has like a real fighting background, but he sells it. I mean, he looks awesome, and I buy it 100%. And so I don't mind. Like that doesn't bother me if you build those kind of things in, because I'm like, you got to have a way out, I'm sure. And but the moment where they blew it out was awesome for several reasons. One, they have to be pastiching Old Boy. Have you ever seen Old Boy?
I have not seen Old Boy.
Of course. Yeah, there it is.
Mixed tears.
It's dude, honestly, the original Old Boy, that is probably my favorite fight scene of all time, is the hallway fight in Old Boy. And everybody knows that fight scene. Anyone who's seen the movie, even if you've only seen it.
I've heard of the hallway fight in Old Boy, and
even if you've only seen the movie once, and it was in 2003 or 4 when it came out, whatever, it's stuck with you because it's so awesome. And this is 100% a nod to that. But I also think that it was like at first I thought, oh, they're just nodding to Old Boy. But the more it went on, the more I was like, you know what? I think that we're supposed to be looking at it from God's point of view right now. Like I think he's directly watching it.
Yeah.
And I think it's another one of those instances where like now that his hand has kind of been tipped to the viewer and we know that he's kind of orchestrating stuff and observing, because some pretty crazy shit happens in this scene that could be attributed to luck, but it could also be to God being like helping out a little bit and getting him through it. And I think that initially we're just in the moment like, yeah, look at Jesse doing his thing, and then when it pulls back, that's kind of our cue that he's got some help, and then it goes back in.
Yeah, because you get the point where he like basically get to a burly brawl point of like everybody's dogpiled on Jesse, and then somehow it gets broken out. That's interesting. I didn't think about that at all in the context.
We also get those beats of like the knife coming to his face and like time stopping essentially, and it seems like he's even getting a second to evaluate how he gets out of it, and then he proceeds to get out of it.
That's really interesting. I didn't necessarily even put that together.
Plus, then we see God in the house later.
Yes, 100%.
I think that maybe you're on the one hand you can take away from that he was there participating, but I think that that's maybe what we would have thought with like season 2 or 3 God, but I think that he was just there, kind of keeping an eye on the situation, and he's watching the plan, which makes my head spin because this runs contrary to God's agenda from the comic. So at this point, I don't really understand.
Well, and before we get to that, like the thing that the knife moment coming close to his face, for me, I was a little baffled because I felt like they were doing the hot tub time machine with his eye. You know.
I didn't even think of that.
I was like, why would you do that? It's only been in, like it's only been in the credits, really, and so we don't really, So
that's hilarious. I didn't even think of that. That's funny.
So that's where my head went, rather than like divine intervention.
You just think they're gonna keep faking out to the eye. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but
that to this day remains one of the funniest jokes I've ever seen in Hot Tub Time Machine. That had me roaring, and that was not a very funny movie, but that part was amazing.
It was fantastic. But so that was what I kind of thought of that. But to your broader point of like we learn, I guess we'll get there eventually, but anyway, Jesse, like the idea that this is being used as propaganda to start a worldwide manhunt for Jesse, like what happened at the Desaad house. It seems like God is giving the Grail the tools to hunt Jesse down, basically, to put everybody on the case, to like have the manpower to actually take him down, or put enough on the way to God that Jesse will never actually reach him, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's kind of the way that I saw it. And obviously, you know, you're saying that it's running contrary to how God in the comics works. It's not, you don't necessarily have to go into detail or anything, but I can see a through line of like why God might be doing it, but it obviously might not line up with what you know from the books, right?
Yeah, I think there's a crucial bit of information about the dynamic between God and Jesse in the book that hasn't been explained yet in the show.
Okay.
That would probably help clarify a lot for
Okay.
everybody. But we'll see if that comes to pass.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fight ultimately ends in tragedy.
Yes, with
poor little kid.
Yeah, and that's the other like crazy coincidence moment of like, oh, it just so happens that he got shot in the head through a door.
Through another guy's head, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So,
that moment was actually made. There were a few moments in this fight that made me laugh out loud at the choreography, and one was just him headshotting 3 guys in a row as the gun. I was like, this is how I feel playing every Far Cry game. That's me.
Yep.
In every Far Cry game. Headshots everybody, knives, beat them up, can't get touched.
Super aim assist.
Yes, exactly. That was great. I did actually laugh as bleak as the moment was when she's decided ran in and was like, I think you broke my nose. Like that, for some reason, like the blocking of the shot and delivery really made me laugh. Like I was like, that's a pretty perfect joke to cap this whole thing off.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like Jesus actually getting
destroyed,
completely destroyed,
liquefied. That
insane.
Was nuts. That was so much more violent than I thought they could get away with.
So like the pilot's reaction to it, which I think is also like an interesting point. The idea, like, so I don't know. I said, as the pilot drives off, we see God standing at the window inside the Desaad house in his man dog suit, fitting right in. You know, he's going incognito, but the the pilot like getting back to the car and being like unable to process what he witnessed, and Jesse using the word to like wash it out of his mind, I thought was interesting. I don't necessarily know exactly what it means. There was some very good stuff on our Discord that Joseph was saying about like we're being set up for this idea that like Jesse's using the word but never really actually doing any good with it.
That happens a lot in the book. You know, there's a similar act of mercy like that involving memory that he does do in the comic to a character to let them forget something. And it does also stand out quite a bit because he's usually telling someone to like go fuck themselves using the word and watching them do it. Like, it's usually something really brutal and like nasty and sadistic to somebody, which is like kind of an important thing to remember about Jesse, I think, is that he does have a pretty twisted side to him as well. And like Cassidy kind of identified it earlier in the season. And even like, you know, he pretty much, the psychological evaluation of Tulip is, it could fit Jesse as well. Like he definitely likes violence, for sure, as much as he tries not to. I mean, remember that first fight scene in season 1 when he snaps that guy's arm and that grin on his face? As a viewer, for the first time, you're just kind of exhilarated by like the protagonist like taking action. But at the same time, it's kind of a red flag of like, oh, this guy is really...
This preacher is delighting in the pain.
And he's good at it. Yeah, he's really good at it. So there is a similar instance in the book where he does actually use the word for some good, and he shows some like remorse for something that somebody had to witness, and he helps them forget it. So the pilot was up to something in there. He was having a little fun. Somewhere.
Pantsless as he
Pantsless
exited.
pilot.
Yeah.
He went in there to help out this kid and instead found something else more interesting.
Yeah, the pilot's code definitely amounted to nothing, as we were previously speaking about. Oh, yeah. All right, anything else about the Desaad house?
I just think I had the one note that said, well, good stuff, Desaad. There it is. It's all over.
All right.
He's in an episode and then he's out.
He's out.
Which honestly, again, kind of like the sex detectives. I don't really mind. Like it's cool that they made the show, and I'm kind of cool with like that being it. Like it's a little funny because I know from the Discord too that like when other comic book readers saw Desaad in the window in the previous episode, we're like, oh shit, I remember thinking to myself, oh, they're doing Jesus Desaad. That's awesome. Like I did not expect that. And the fact that he's just one and done essentially is kind of okay, but at the same time, it to a reader, you're thinking there's going to be more to it, and there really isn't.
Well, and the weird thing is that it seems like it just plays into this bigger plan to get more people on Jesse's tail, right? Which I think
it served a function.
It definitely served a function, and that's something that I think we talked about in the past of like the fact that there are these kind of warring factions or people that want the word or Jesse for some reason.
Yeah,
and
that's
true. It seems like we are building to that, especially with this Hitler stuff that's coming up.
That is very true. Yeah, that's a good point. I do like this portrayal of God, though. That's no secret if you've been listening. But I like, people in real life ask all the time, like, if there is a God, why does he let so much bad stuff happen? And there is no good answer for that for anybody.
Yeah.
But it does bring, I think, it's worth noting that he is willing to set up this house full of deviants to be killed by this guy and wiped off everyone's plate in order to serve some other plan. And it's interesting that God is willing to just like let these people get mowed down by him when he could conceivably do something else.
Yeah, from what we understand.
But instead he's like, no, I'll let Jesse Custer stab and kill and snap.
That's kind of the Saints thing too to Eugene is like, bring it up with God, man. This is his plan. I'm killing these people. They're dying.
That's true.
He's letting it happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that is interesting. No, that's one of the things that I always think about. I don't remember where, how, or if it's just this kind of general reading on, ancient religions that I've gathered over time. But the idea of like Greek mythology and the Greek gods are these very petulant and self-absorbed people that are using their powers kind of willy-nilly and doing whatever they want with it. It's always been kind of an interesting interpretation that maybe has come more into focus thousands of years later, whereas in terms of Christianity, also been around for thousands of years at this point, but even more recently, times of like pilgrims and such, and the idea of like God is this thing to be feared because you need to obey him and follow his rules, period.
Right.
You learn you learn a lot of the things in catechism and things like that of like, hey, God is good, but that's just what you get told. Who knows what God actually is.
That's someone's reading of the situation.
Exactly, yeah. So I think I like the fact that Preacher is portraying this like, what if God didn't give a fuck anymore and is like has his own agenda to.
Yeah, that's what makes it so good.
Yeah,
that's one thing that makes it so good and is largely absent from the show.
Well, but I think it's coming through.
It is now. That is some of what I really like about this episode and this season. It's like, okay,
we're getting there.
I mean, since like season 2 of our show,
Preacher's starting.
Exactly. I've been like saying since like season 2 of our show, like, hey, this is all good. When are we going to start chasing after God though? Because ultimately, that's kind of the main thrust of the book, and there's lots and lots and lots and lots of other stuff that goes on too. But like that
is the tagline of Preacher, "What if God was one of us?"
Probably should be. Oh man, that was really, really good, but really bad. Yeah, I mean, there's so much about Preacher that has fascinated me since my first read, but that idea at its core that God would say, we're at the dinosaur level now where we're all eating our own shit, like, and he's like, I'm out, like,
fuck it, I'm done.
Exactly. Like, okay, A, what if that happened, and B, what if this being Genesis did exist and went into this preacher and he made it his mission to go find God and hold him responsible and say, like, you don't get to walk away, you made this mess, you got to stand by it, kind of thing. That despite all the other crazy stuff that happens in Preacher, has always been to me one of the most fascinating parts, and the fact that we're finally getting into that is great. And it's not like that it's too late necessarily. I've enjoyed everything else so far, but it's just like this is so much more rewarding to me.
Yeah,
and that's why Preacher is such a hard sell, because if you try to tell somebody to read it, like, oh, what's it about? Well, you've seen almost 4 seasons of the show now. How the hell would you? What's the elevator pitch to somebody? Like, if you wanted to tell your mom to try it out, not that you're going to recommend Preacher to your mom, but you know what I mean? Like, you're like, well, this guy, he goes looking for God, but he's got this power to make everyone obey what he says, and he's traveling with his ex-girlfriend.
I think I would say, what if God was one of us?
And a vampire, and, well, there are vampires, but you know what I mean? It just, there's angels, and there's this thing called the Santa Killers, and, like, it just is this crazy hairball of beauty. But anyway, TLDR, the God stuff is really cool. I like it.
And you're putting into focus of, like, how good season 1 was as, like, the primer.
Yeah.
And, like, here's what's at play in this universe.
It's weird that you could almost take the end of season 1 and the beginning of 4 and just connect them, and it would probably kind of work in a very strange way.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But it wouldn't. I mean, there's lots of callbacky type stuff, but at the same time, like, well, we're not talking about Anvil or any of that, or I'm sorry, not Anvil, Angelville, or the French Quarter stuff. But that's kind of the way the book is too. A lot of it is very like these little self-contained like biomes of story, and they're all interlinked in a greater way.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you're really focusing in on this too and asking these kind of questions and taking note of the bigger, to me, the biggest discussion of what Preacher is about is like, these questions of God and his obligation to stand by his creation, even if we continue to, just look out the window.
Eat our poop.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All right. As Jesse waits for his plane to depart at the airport, Hitler stops by to offer Jesse a place in hell. Hitler firmly believes Jesse belongs in hell and thinks he'll end up there sooner or later. He also thinks God will never let Jesse near him. Jesse uses the word on Hitler to demonstrate his power and then leaves to catch his personal flight. Jesse's on the plane when a slight jolt of turbulence turns on the in-flight entertainment to show a new story about the rampage at the Desaad house, calling him evil incarnate and starting a worldwide manhunt for him. The plane turbulence worsens, and as Jesse imagines Tulip chastising him for not saying goodbye, we hear metal ripping as the screen cuts to black. So Hitler's back. I surprisingly am not as like as much as I thought I would be of him showing up.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Like,
do I agree? You feel that way? Or?
No. How do you feel about Hitler's continued presence in the show?
Yeah, that it didn't bother me as much because I think I agree with you. Like, this feels like maybe an acceptable place for Hitler in this show. But I also
he's
thought
a stand-in for Satan at this point.
Yeah,
which is
exactly. Like if you're gonna have somebody do it, you got a good candidate there.
Yep.
I thought though there was a second where I was like, oh, they're gonna do it. He's just gonna kill him. He's gonna make him choke himself to death, and it's gonna be awesome.
That would have been good.
And then when he didn't, I was like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, why not? Why would you stop? That's the thing. I feel like comic Jesse, if Hitler had showed up and asked him, he'd have been like, you just would have made him kill himself, and then be like, that's it, like done. But at the same time, can you really kill him? Is he just gonna go back to hell? Is he just gonna reset to hell?
Yeah.
It doesn't. Was he even physically actually there?
Well,
I mean, yeah, presumably he was. He came through some sort of hell mouth somewhere.
Yeah. What are Hitler's powers now as the head of hell?
Jesus. I don't know. I forgot until we were listening to some of our recap about Satan's office. His ridiculously
LCD
dorky,
floor that like has flames on it.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I wonder what it looks like now. I'm still left wondering why we spent all that time with Hitler, though.
Well, and so I guess my question is here. Hitler says something about being in town for a convention. I am kind of wondering if he's in on the plan between the Grail and God and Hitler. Like, is it this weird triumvirate of forces trying to affect Jesse in some way?
Maybe. Although it would have been a great reason to make fun of something I can't think of yet, but like him saying I'm in town for a convention and then cutting to like
yeah, and like an art show or something.
Yeah, or like something that we actually collectively as people generally think is bad, but you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of an example and I'm really coming up short.
It's just the opposite of the Geneva Convention.
Yeah, maybe. Or like
pretty much.
Like a Smash Mouth concert or something. You know, I don't want to use them as the example, but something like that we all kind of universally...
The views of Nick Blauvelt do not represent...
100%. It's a bad example because I have no ill will towards Smash Mouth.
It's a Nickelback concert.
Better choice. Something like that we all kind of groan at and you know want to say is bad. It just feels like it would have been in line with like Genesis flying into Tom Cruise and exploding. Like it's something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
Right in with your better examples. I mean, no disrespect or ill will towards Smash Mouth or Nickelback or any other wildly successful musician.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's there for a screening of The Room.
Maybe. Jeez. Yeah.
All right. I don't know. Any other thoughts? Jesse on the plane again, remembering Tulip.
I don't think this is the crash, but it could be. The only reason I don't think that is because of comic baggage I'm carrying with me. It also feels like this is a Lost style ending to an episode where they make you go, "Oh my God, it's happening," and then it's not going to happen yet. Yes. This is your hot tub time machine moment.
Yeah, yeah, another one.
We'll see. No, I do like that Tulip keeps showing up to. I like that they are each bothered by how they left it, basically, and that each one is kind of still speaking to the other.
Well, yeah, and Jesse also sees Cassidy as well, and Cassidy's obviously dealing with his own stuff, but I think Jesse's clearly set up to reckon with this choice, and the fact that Tulip is as well, I think is good. I'm interested. I'm still invested in them. Yeah. The one thing I was going to bring up, not that it really matters that much, we championed. You specifically championed the relationship between Ruth Nigga and Dominic Cooper.
Why can't those two kids just work it out?
The pessimist in me, when I was very unhappy at the fact that the group split up again, was kind of like I hope this isn't like a we don't want to spend time together on the set anymore kind of situation, you know? Things that we've heard that, I think Game of Thrones, there was a popular one with the actor who played Bronn was never allowed to be near Cersei anymore because they had dated at one point and hated each other. And
oh, really?
Yeah. So
that's funny.
You know, and so not as I said, not that it really should have any bearing on anybody's feelings about the show, but there's part of me that was just kind of like, I hope that's not the reason, because
Bronn is such a stud.
That's true.
Rock on, Bronn. That's my man. I have not watched the last 5 years of Game of Thrones, so I feel safe saying that.
Yeah, you had to qualify it a little bit.
I don't know what atrocities he commits later. Yeah, I don't think so. I know what you're saying. I think that they're both professional enough.
I think so,
because they had already split by like season 3, right?
Yeah, it was something like that. And
haven't they split before? I thought I recalled that they had been on for like years off and then on for more years.
Maybe. I don't know.
And they had worked. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, I think that they both. I think I even read an interview with one of them about it where they said that they had been so close for so long that it was just nice to have like one of your best friends with you on set all the time. And I think that is something they said about the beauty of being in a relationship and working on the show together, was they talked about how these can be like 12, 14-hour days.
So Ruth's Wikipedia says she was in a relationship with actor Dominic Cooper beginning in 2010. They first met in 2009 while working together in a stage adaptation of Phaedra with Helen Mirren. Ooh. The two lived together in London's Primrose Hill. The couple dated for 6 years. However, she pointed out that it took press years to learn of the breakup, which was first reported in 2018.
Oh, okay.
So that's basically
they've been apart for a few years now.
Yeah. And they notably star opposite each other in AMC's Preacher, which the pair portray lovers and has said that they are best friends. So yeah, probably not. I think it's just me being TMZ
I honestly
about
hope
it.
that they just those two crazy kids just
gotta
work it out.
Yeah.
Just work it out.
Mm-hmm.
They just they're just so good together.
Yeah.
On screen and I'm sure off
That's true.
That they're a delight. She's American though, right? In real life?
I don't think so. Sorry, let me go back here. Gotta load it up again.
Recently closed.
Mm-hmm, yep. She was born in Ethiopia, but she has Irish citizenship.
Oh wow.
And Dominic Cooper.
He's English. Or Welsh, maybe?
Dominic Cooper, born in England. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew he was.
Yep.
I thought she
English
was American.
actor.
Wow.
No. Yeah.
Spectacular job.
Yeah.
Isn't Joe Gilgan also not Irish?
Let's take a look
He
here.
is. He's British Isles, I think, but I don't think he's Irish.
Joseph William Gilgan is an English actor known for several roles.
I mean, I'm no expert, but I think his Irish is pretty
you
bang
fucking
on.
fooled the shit out of me. Yeah.
That a lot of people, I think that that's a really easy accent to do, but it's not. Like,
it's an easy accent to do in the terms of like everybody can do the Lucky Charms commercial, but like
to actually get it right,
yeah,
I think is really tricky. And that's I'm like I said, I'm no expert. I just have watched enough British and Irish movies over the years that it's easy to tell apart an actual Irishman from like a English person trying to do an Irish accent.
And I don't know if you had pointed it out or there's those videos online. I'm not sure if it's Vanity Fair or who it is, but somebody's been putting like an accent expert up against lots of different movie accents and things like that.
I would love to read that.
So yeah, I don't know. Well, there's a bunch of videos of it online. I'll try to send you the link. But both Joe Gilgan and Ruth Negga got shouted out on like the same episode that I watched because of how good their accents are and how different their native accents are. Yeah, and how good of a job she does as an American and he does as an Irishman.
Yeah.
So I'll have to find that for you. I'll put it in the show notes for anybody who hasn't seen it but
I would love that.
I'll track it down and send it your way.
Fun Nick trivia. One of my earliest considerations for a major in college was linguistics.
Oh, interesting.
Because I really love languages.
Is that why you love Avatar?
Avatar the movie?
Yeah.
I think you've got me confused with someone else.
I was trying to think of the paramount of like invented languages.
I mean, Tolkien is your man.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Dude wrote Lord of the Rings because he wanted to invent language. Because he needed somewhere to put his languages he had made up. He belonged to a linguistics club with a bunch of other uber nerds who would just made up languages together and like would critique each other's languages and like talk about each other's grammar and like this is what they did for fun. And then he was like, I gotta write a world for this shit to be in. Hold on, let me check my notebook.
Have we ever spoken? Now that we need to completely go off the rails in the last of these 90 minutes we've been talking, but have we ever talked about The Lost Empire or Atlantis: The Lost Empire?
The Disney
movie?
Yeah, that shit's sweet.
Okay, beautiful. I don't know anybody else who's seen that movie, so
yeah, the movie's tight.
Yeah,
I only saw it for the first time like 3 years ago on Netflix.
Really?
Yeah,
that's awesome. I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I think I was a little too old when it came out because that was kind of part of the era when they started doing more computer animation.
Yeah, it's in kind of that forgotten like Treasure Planet-ish time.
Treasure Planet is also pretty cool.
I've never watched Treasure Planet, so
that's also one that I watched as an adult.
Interesting.
Or like as a quote unquote adult who watches
whatever I am now.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever I was 5 years ago. Yeah, I liked both of those. I thought they were cool. In terms of how they meld their animations together.
Yeah.
And Treasure Island is a pretty awesome book, and like to adapt it like that is really sweet. And Atlantis was pretty. Didn't they make a few sequels to that, or like?
I think there's one sequel. I don't think I've seen it.
Did they do a show? I feel like they did something else, but I could totally be wrong.
I don't know.
Anyway, I thought Atlantis was pretty cool, but yeah, it had like that language stuff. I remember thinking the explosives guy was the shit in Atlantis.
Yeah. Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, that was a cool movie.
Yeah,
yeah. Languages are. I'm always really impressed when movies or like any sort of fiction has their own like languages and even visual languages like symbols and stuff like that. That's part of the reason I really dig the Hellboy comics too. I mean, there's tons of reasons, but a lot of his world, his aesthetic has lots of his own distinct kind of symbols and like symbology,
demonic
and that kind of
rune,
yeah,
and
which
things
is
like
really
that.
cool.
Interesting.
Because that's one of the amazing things about language is like there's not only the like written word and spoken word, but there's like visual language too, like dance and even like painting and cinema to an extent can be like an extension of language, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's actually man, we're getting way off here, but I'm gonna roll with it.
It's the end anyway.
Yeah,
so
exactly. You
they've
can
already
feel free
checked
to
out.
stop listening whenever you want. There's a Marvel character called Cypher who he has actually a couple names. He's a mutant, and his mutant ability is to inherently understand and be able to like replicate any language.
That's awesome.
It is awesome if you're like this dorky, where you are able to say that's awesome, because he was definitely the butt of a lot of jokes back in the day because writers hadn't really figured out how to use him.
Yeah.
But eventually writers started figuring out that his ability, that language can extend beyond like, oh, he can just understand Swiss and Russian and German. Like they figured out
He's
like
the translator guy.
That's exactly what his function was initially.
Yeah.
But then people started being like, oh, he can understand like the language of like the universe, and he can understand mathematics, and he can talk to computers and machines. And someone was like, oh wait, martial arts is a language, it's a form of expression, so he can just immediately like learn. He knows like all fighting
That's
forms.
pretty
and,
fucking
like,
rad.
yeah, and like the language of like mechanics and like piloting and stuff like that. He can just absorb. So he almost is like more of an information absorber who can intake like information that can be transmitted via any sort of conceivable language and then output it.
Who was the writer that unlocked his potential? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Has it been like a gradual slider?
I think
over
so.
time?
I think like
Okay.
someone would do a little innovation, which is like what makes really long running characters cool. Is when people start to do that with characters' powers. It's like Multiple Man. Like initially he was created as more of a joke, and now he's my favorite comic book character because of Peter David figured out how to make it cool. Peter David is probably what was involved in, because I think Cypher was part of the New Mutants at first. Anyway, this is where Tim could probably weigh in pretty good on this. But to that idea that characters like that can seem lame and stupid can be reinvented by somebody and be really cool.
Yeah.
Which is honestly kind of what Preacher the show has done for our space.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
Like took a character I did not like and actually made him really fantastic.
Put some compelling,
even if he's a little aimless right now
at the moment.
At least they got a car. I remember thinking like, if they don't get out of this episode not with a real means of conveyance, then I don't know what we're doing.
What if they keep upgrading their
I just want to get
style
that
of
moment
travel?
of the Saint standing
boat.
on the bow of the ship and just taking a storm in the face, and Eugene hiding inside the cabin.
Beautiful.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know what to expect from the season. Like, there's a lot. I'm actually surprised at a lot of the things that have happened. Like the Jesus Assad thing, bringing him in was kind of a surprise, and then immediately killing him was also a surprise. I'm like, oh, all right. Like, it's kind of better to be shocked in a way than like disappointed.
Yeah, I guess like the biggest takeaway that I've got right now from these first 3 episodes is how dissatisfied I am with how disorderly things feel.
Yeah, I could completely get behind that.
And then I also, I don't know if we've talked about it previously or not, but I also kind of hate flash forwards. You know, it was something that I was really conflicted about with Breaking Bad, because those guys always felt like they had a plan, but later on I learned that Vince Gilligan always was just kind of like, well, we kind of made that to paint ourselves in a corner and figure out how to get there.
So you like encourage that innovation.
Yeah. Whereas I think with this of like, we're literally heading into this season, it's going to end. You know how it's going to end. You, the writers, know how it's going to end, and you're giving me this little snippet of something in the future. Now my mind is constantly trying to fit the puzzle pieces together and write the Rubik's Cube and understand where the dots all connect and line up. And I don't know that I wanted or needed that out of Preacher at this point. So I'm upset with the editing, and I'm upset with that flash forward in some ways, but I am still trying to enjoy and take some of the stuff that's happening in between and enjoy it. So hopefully by the end of the season, I kind of feel, okay, it was worth it and I figured it out and I get what they were going for. But at this point in time, I feel like I'm lost in the in-between of like, all right, I know where things are going, but I don't know how we get there at all. And for a show that's always been more about the characters and what's happening to them, to then put this like carrot on a stick of like, here's where we're headed, just in this final season, I'm kind of.
Yeah, I think it's a tactic that I think I understand why they're doing it. They're definitely trying to keep people in viewing.
Yeah,
and it does work. Like now that I've seen that glimpse of what's to happen, even though I know. It got me immediately more excited for the season. I'm not going to lie. Like, that was one of my first notes. Was that. Like, oh, hell yes. Like, that made me stoked that that's coming. But I'm... The tendency, I think, with readers is that you're charting your own course as to how it's going to get there, and that might not be how it happens. Yeah. It's like the same reason why I'm saying, like, oh, I don't think this is the plane crash. I could 100% be wrong. The next week, it might open with the plane going down and Jesse falling out of it or something.
And the thing is that timing still doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I also am so lost that I don't.
You're just adrift.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And I will say I'm really, really glad that we have maintained our energy level this episode. I'd like to thank my friends.
That's exactly where my mind went when you started, when you got to that tone. That way. Beautiful.
I'd like to thank my family.
That's a little you talking U2 to me, and are you talking REM re-me joke for those of you that
which
listen
is
to
another
those
show
podcasts.
Everyone has. Oh, that reminds me.
Your listening recommendation, Nick, please.
I won't finish the thought I just had going. Doesn't matter. It's gone.
No, please.
It's gone. He's gone. I threw it away. No, my listening recommendation. I had texted Alex probably last year sometime and said, hey, you should listen to the song The Wanderer by U2 / Johnny Cash. And I don't remember if I even prefaced it with anything, but I was like, it's basically, in a weird way, the plot of Preacher, but also kind of the plot of like every Fallout game and very post-apocalyptic-y kind of. Anyway, I grew up in a household that played a lot of U2, thanks to my brother, who's a massive U2 fan. I like U2 for the most part. There are definitely massive deficits in their catalog that I don't think are good at all. But I think they have a lot of worth. But I think definitely in my top 5 favorite U2 songs of all time would be this song, which they don't sing on. I mean, they're there in like the background, but it's sung by Johnny Cash. And there's a lot of interesting trivia around the song itself and when it was written. I think it's on Zooropa.
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay, I think it's on the album Zooropa. But I think I was listening to it on the way here. It is on Zooropa.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's the last track on the album. It's a really fascinating song, and it really stands out in their catalog because of what it's about, and also just musically, it's pretty unique and pretty distinct, and also the fact that it's sung by Johnny Cash makes it awesome. But when I listen to it, and this is a song I've known of for 15 years probably. Yeah. Like, this is a song I've heard throughout my life a lot. But it clicked for me one day. I don't remember at what point, but I was like, oh my God, that's basically what Preacher's about in a weird way. And I would encourage everyone to, if you don't know it already, seek it out. And even if you don't like U2, give it a listen because it's a really, really cool song. Yeah. And, write in and let us know what you think. If you think I'm just, hearing what I want to hear and it doesn't actually tie in, but I kind of feel like certain verses are from the perspective of Jesse and certain verses are actually from the perspective of God. And sometimes the two are kind of intermingling with each other, and it's from the perspective of both of them. But the song has got to predate Preacher by like a decade or something. So I wonder if, in a weird way, it almost maybe helped inspire it, or whether consciously or unconsciously. I don't know, but the similarities are so close that I feel like either they were both inspired by something even further back. Yeah,
they tapped into the same...
just the same idea that what if God was walking around on earth, what would he think, what would he say, which is probably something that's been written about many, many, many times. But I think it works really well as a companion piece to this show and to the book, and I would encourage everybody to check it out. So
Yeah, and then on top of that, if you could add on Joan Osborne's "What If God Was One of Us," I think it taps
Is that what
into
you
this.
Googled really quickly? I saw you typing really rapidly, and I was like, what is he looking up? That's true. You could undermine my point and listen
I'm
to
sorry.
that. Honestly, that song makes me think of Austin Powers now.
I think of Bruce Almighty.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah. But yeah.
The Wanderer is on Spotify. I listened to it on the way here. And
I was very close to I had a catastrophic computer failure earlier this year, a couple weeks ago, really.
I didn't know that, yeah.
And I did not have a copy of All In by the Red Thread anywhere at my fingertips, and it kind of disappeared off the internet where I originally got it from, I think. But anyway, I was close to being like, all right, I'm going to put the Wanderer in. Like, I was going to do it, but then I was just kind of like, at the same time,
I wonder if you could.
Part of me think nobody really cares, and if somebody did, then they'd send me a cease and desist, and then I could just edit it out and put something else out. But at the same time, I was also kind of like, well, you know, we've done 4 years of this show. Maybe I should keep the TV side of it one thing, and if we want to do something else for the comic, we can consider what we would like to do. So
either way, we could either do that or lead out of our final episode of this show with it.
True.
It is kind of fitting.
Very true.
Well, I got to say, the song, I forgot to mention in our episode, the song that played in the first episode of this season during the montage of Jesse like leaving was really good.
Yeah.
I think it was in the first episode. It might have been in the second episode.
No, you're right. It's at the end of the first episode.
I had it looked up on YouTube because I was listening to it. That song is not on Spotify. It's called Just Like the Old Days by the band called The Swayback.
Okay.
It is not on Spotify, which I was stunned. I was like, I've only looked up maybe 3 songs ever that I could not find on Spotify. But it is on YouTube, and it's a really cool song. And I thought it suited the show and the moment really well. And I really would love if people would make a playlist of songs that are all kind of in this same vibe. I think that'd be really cool because it's not just country music. It's not just rock music. There's a specific kind of tone, kind of lone man wandering kind of vibe, which also again reminds me a little bit of Fallout.
Yeah.
And it's always the songs I wish were on like the Fallout radio, but instead it's like big band stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, check out that song and let us know what you think, or don't let us know or don't check it out. But I recommend it.
No, thank you to everybody who's written to us. We're looking forward to receiving more feedback throughout the season.
Please keep them coming because honestly, it's a huge bright spot.
Absolutely.
Like I did not count on getting any feedback this season at all, and it has definitely been like a kind of a buoy.
I'm glad that the core players are with us. The people that we've been hearing from since the beginning are still here. So
and then the guys we barely mentioned, like Bruce and Joseph and Tommy, or those guys in the Discord that have all been very active as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave. The Discord, some great discussion after every episode. There are some good. The other thing, I did forget to mention it, and I'm sad that I waited until now to mention it. But Joseph did post. He said regarding the Lost Apostle, Google says that the 12 apostles are pillars of rock in the ocean near Melbourne, Australia. One of them was called the Lost Apostle, but it was shaped more like a sailboat, and it collapsed in 2005. Oh. And he posted a link to this fine art website that someone's selling prints of the 12 apostles.
That is amazing.
And so I'll put that in the show notes as well. But thank you very much, Joseph, for bringing that up. It's really like visually not much like the phallic shaped mountain of the show.
No, but if it's the Lost Apostle, if it's like the 13th apostle or something like that, or whether that's just a funny name for the rock that's not part of that formation but seems like it should be.
Yeah.
Or if there will actually be this weird greater conspiracy of a 13th apostle no one knows about.
Yeah.
It's and that kind of stuff is awesome. It makes me think of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the weird religious stuff that kind of follows that grail, the quest for the grail and that.
Absolutely.
Like that city. Where is that city? It's where the climax of Last Crusade takes place. That big
yeah, I see it on the National Geographic Instagram
real.
All the time.
I didn't know that was real until I was like 20 and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
That's real? That blew my mind. Like I did not know that was an actual place, and it's just incredible looking. I think it's somewhere is it in Turkey? I know I just saw another picture.
Jordan.
It's in Jordan.
The Canyon of the Crescent Moon.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Let's take this show there.
Yeah.
Let's go back there. That place is sweet.
Yeah, I mean Masada's very much like of the same.
That's true.
Of the same ilk.
It is kind of cut from that same cloth. Yeah, totally.
But no, yeah, I absolutely.
Well, this has been a good long.
Yeah.
Loquacious
Hopefully
episode.
enjoyed those extra 30 minutes of other material that's in there.
Non-preacher related.
We'll know that I'll give you the same code word that we've given to other people that have gotten through impossibly long episodes of our show. Tweet at me the word cicada if you made it this far.
Have you done that before?
Yeah, I did it once,
okay.
and David Steele was the only person that
He's the only one that
tweeted
stays through to the end.
Yeah, but yeah,
these sound like Xbox error codes or something,
yes.
or Destiny error codes.
Songbird. Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast at g2tpodcast.com. We're also on TV Time, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music. We're G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can email us at g2tpodcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Preacher or our podcast. The Midwest Podcast Network has other shows about video games, horror movies, FX's The Alienist, and HBO's Westworld. Find out more about these shows as well as how to support the network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Our theme song is still the music, the song All In by The Red Thread, and it is being used under a non-commercial Creative Commons license. And that's all for this episode of Gone to Texas. We can't wait to see what next week's episode of Preacher brings, but until then, go forth and speak the good word.